Amos. It is an absolute pleasure to welcome you along to Songs in the Key of Life. How are you?
I love being here. I love being in Ireland. It's great.
I love you being here. This is amazing. We're so pleased to have you in. And we're speaking on the Thursday, which is, of course, the day after your first gig in the Olympia. You're playing 2 nights here. And after you've kick-started your 80-day tour. So it's kind of cool that you started off in Ireland. And how was last night?
The audiences are always incredible in Ireland. They were singing along with me. They were singing during a song called Leather, but everybody's in perfect pitch. That's the thing about audiences in Ireland. They have perfect tone, and they don't shout. Everybody's together, and you think, oh my God, there's nothing like this in the world that sounds like this.
Well, you have a home in Kinsale, so you're well used to us by this point, but one of the things that's always struck me about seeing you live is watching you at the piano. Well, multiple pianos or keyboards or instruments. You seem to almost reinvent how one would perform at a gig with piano. So you could be astride the stool playing with one hand on one piano, one hand on the other. Did you take inspiration from that for any particular person, or was it purely what you wanted to do, your own way?
Well, I guess a long time ago, a very long time ago, I would watch the guitar players, and not just the guitar players, but performers who were able to get their hands on this unbelievable force, this voltage. And I would watch them allow the song to come through them underneath their skin, and they would allow themselves to be taken over by the song. A possession maybe, but also a co-creation if you look at it this way. So you're merging together with the song itself. And you can watch people do this from, I don't know, the last 50, 60 years of all kinds of performers, jazz performers, blues performers, then the rock performers in the 60s and 70s, and it goes on and on and on. So as a girl growing up and watching how other people would work with this energy, I began to think, you know, at the piano, people just really sit and play it. They might move a little bit, but they don't play it as if they're riding a buffalo. And maybe that Native American came out in me, and I thought, right, we need some buffalo riding going on.
It's a far cry from your quite demure origins growing up in Maryland. You won a scholarship to what was, I think, called the Peabody Institute, am I right?
Yes.
The Peabody Conservatory of Music. But you were asked to leave at the age of 11. What happened?
Well, I guess my horns were showing, and they knew that I was a bit anti-establishment even back then, because there was a thought that contemporary music, there was being contemporary music made at the time that was breaking the windows of thought, compositional thought open. With the Beatles and George Martin, those arrangements, things were really changing. Norwegian Wood and Eleanor Rigby and songs like that. And so I was talking to them at the time about including these types of composition as part of study. And somebody said to me at the time, you won't know these songs in 30 years' time. This music will be gone. Well, yes, I was right, but that didn't help me out when I was 11.
So off you went, and into kind of a different direction, one that your parents were maybe a little bit concerned about, rock and roll, basically. So how did you start using the piano as an instrument in a different way?
Well, I started working in bar rooms at 13. My dad got me a job first at a gay club in Georgetown. And then I moved over to a place called Mr. Smith's, and then it went on from there. And I was working all the time. So I would have to develop a way of performing, professionally performing for people, taking requests, then working up a set list. It would be a mixture of both. And I guess in order to grab people's attention and focus, I would need to present the piano in a way that was fresh. So it was a beginning came from a place of I need to capture the imagination of what a piano can do.
Well, we've asked you today to come up with a set list of songs that have acted as a soundtrack to your life, and you have presented us with the most amazing list. What song would you like to play first?
Oh my goodness. Well, we just talked about the Beatles, so maybe we should play. Should we play Eleanor Rigby?
Eleanor Rigby, as picked by Tori Amos on Songs in the Key of Life. Now, Tori, I want to talk about your first album, because for many people, myself included, Little Earthquakes was the kind of album that completely changes your musical landscape. I remember getting a copy on tape, and just being so struck by the lyrics, where you were coming from, the way you managed to change how the piano was essentially portrayed in modern music as becoming kind of more of an indie instrument. For you, when you were making that record, were you conscious of how big it could be, how important it would wind up being?
No. I was making music to survive. And I knew that whatever happened, I could wake up with myself in the morning knowing that I was listening to the Muses. I was making music that I was driven to make, and I wasn't making compromises on that music. So I wasn't chasing a commercial tip, obviously. I wasn't clawing onto that coattail. I was following what I felt I needed to do at the time. And when I first turned it in to Atlantic Records, it was rejected, and they wanted to take all the pianos off and put guitars on. So it just shows you that there was a huge fight and understanding that had to happen. And eventually Doug Morris did get the piano aspect of the record, and we agreed if I turned in a few more songs that we could move forward. And we did, and we brought it over to the UK, where Max Hole then was the one that broke the record first.
How great were their ambitions for you as an artist at that time?
Well, I don't know if they knew. It's easy to look back, but the piano wasn't being accepted by radio or by the media as something cool. It wasn't thought of as part of an alternative indie instrument. So that means now you look back and see what happened, but there were many battles that had to be fought, and I needed to fight them.
Were you ambitious for yourself in that sense? Did you want the fame and, I suppose, just getting your music out there on a real global scale?
I'd had a terrible first record response. I enjoyed making it with a producer called Joe Ciccarelli, and it was called Why Can't Tori Read?
This was the more kind of punk.
Yeah, poppy, punk, whatever, rock chick. But the thing is, the image, I think it was more the image as well, that was something I agreed to be part of and was a misrepresentation of who I was. I think if you are a very, specific type of personality, you can pull off a certain image and make it your own, and the public will accept it. But when it goes against who you are, and you can't really pull it off, I think the public recognizes that. So thank goodness I had that experience, because then, after that, I was committed to staying true to the Muses and the songs that were coming after that experience.
The songs on Little Earthquakes, Silent All These Years, Crucify, Me and a Gun, some of these songs are so personal. They deal in quite unflinching detail with your own life. Was it very important to you to have that vulnerability through your art, that the song wouldn't have the same value if you weren't truthful?
I guess the songs started to be a way of, we're back to surviving your life. Beating a necklace became a metaphor for different experiences that might have happened in one's life. Anybody that's listening to this will understand, I think, what I'm saying. You can flash back onto moments in your life, and yet you haven't necessarily been able to come to terms with what happened. And that incident, or many incidences, might have made you who you are. So where do you and how do you move on from these experiences? You can't just cut them out of your being. You can't pretend they didn't happen. You might for a while, but at a certain point then these pictures, these feelings start bubbling up. Then that becomes a song, and then that song becomes part of the necklace that we're beating.
That was obviously a strange time for you, making the album, releasing the album, and dealing with, as you're saying, a lot of what was happening in the songs as well. Is there a song you'd like to play that maybe reflects where you were at that time?
Let's see. I guess an amazing song, a guiding light for me, would be River by Joni Mitchell. I would listen to River quite a bit and think about the escaping side of that song, and then realizing the only way to escape was to go deeper into the truth and write songs specifically about certain things that had happened. So instead of writing songs just to escape, which I can do and do to have fun, to run away from something, then that song inevitably will take me back and take me to the arms of a song that wants to talk about the experience itself.
Now, Tori, we have been talking about some amazing artists already, but I'm going to ask you to pick a song to bring us into the break that is maybe more of a guilty pleasure, because we have songs that are significant in our lives, we have songs that have a lot of meaning, and then we've got songs that they're just either fun or maybe they're not part of the canon in the same way, but they still matter.
Oh, gosh. Well, what would that be for you?
Phil Collins' The Studio?
Oh, yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
Oh, no.
No, that's good.
I'm really uncool.
No, no. He's a great artist. Gosh, there's so many guilty pleasure songs. But guilty pleasures, when I say a guilty pleasure, I'd like to say guilty because my dad would have had a real issue if he had known I was listening to it. Mm-hmm. So, Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones.
Oh, come on, that's an amazing song.
Yeah, but a guilty pleasure, it's guilt. I'm a Christian girl. You know what I mean?
Sympathy for the Devil. She doesn't have guilty pleasures. Tori Amos's pick. This is the Rolling Stones. But I want to bring you back now to your own career, and I suppose maybe to the time in the 90s when it seemed as though you were getting a little controversial with some of your choices, particularly in the visual references. The Boys for Pele album cover featured you, I think there's no other way to say this, suckling some piglets, an image that was beamed across the world and had a lot of people chattering. So maybe take us back to that and to where you were thinking and how you were thinking at the time.
Well, my daughter, who's 13, is quite happy I did this before she was born. She said, "Right move, Mom." At the time, there was a lot of discussion about gay rights and what do we nurture, with the Madonna and Child image very much on my mind. I was thinking that there needed to be a Madonna and Child image, but one that embraced that which we reject. And the piglet just worked for me, metaphorically.
Your gay audience has always been super strong. I think a lot of artists have come to recognize that particular swathes of an audience become particularly important in your career.
Well, the LGBT community has taught me a lot about how to look at issues, to be judged in a way where they're shamed, where a person is shamed because of who they are, is something that my mother, who is very much a spiritual woman, not just from her Native American side, which I think is a very big part of who she is, but she would say to you that she is a devout and devoted Christian, which she is. She does walk the compassionate path of Christ. So I was brought up seeing how she would accept my gay friends into the family with no judgment.
Well, it's separating the institution from the faith, I think. Where do you stand these days in terms of faith?
I guess over the years, traveling the world, it's about listening to how other people see, what they value. And when you begin to see deep kindness, when you see it, from wherever it's from, then I don't really care what their religion is. It doesn't matter to me.
You got married in 1998 to sound engineer Mark Hawley. You had quite an interesting ceremony, didn't you?
Yeah, I guess we did. We had a mixture in the ceremony of an old traditional type wedding ceremony. It was in a church that was over 400 years old, but the church itself was on an ancient place. It was an ancient site that a church had been built on, which a lot of the churches had. They built, I'm sure in Ireland as well. Those who were they knew very well the ancient sites, the sacred sites, and then they built churches on top of those sites.
Well, you've had an interesting time, I suppose, in the 90s, marrying in 1998, having your daughter, Natasha, not too long after that. Was it 2000 she was born? Is there a track that maybe makes you think of that time of love and marriage and having a baby?
Well, there's a song, Wedding Day,
on the new album.
On the new album,
yeah.
Which I think any marriage is, it's a magical thing, it's an alchemical thing. I'm still married to the same man, and I guess you'd say we have date night. We work together, so it does get fiery at times. I mean, Tash will say, can I please have my parents back? Can you leave those people in the studio? And can I have my parents back, please? So on one hand, there's a romantic side of working with somebody. It's sexy because of all that fire. And yeah, you have to work at it. And this song came out of us jamming together. We were just jamming. So this is Wedding Day.
Tori, one of the things that strikes me about the new album is, well, A, it's a family affair. Your daughter sings very beautifully on a track called The Promise, but also B, it is a return to a very simple Tori Amos album, if you like, not a seasonal album, not an album designed to go back to maybe more classical roots. It's you, and is the autobiography that we'd seen maybe in sort of the more early years coming back to the fore again, where you're very comfortable talking about your own life?
Under the Pink is 20 years this year. It was pointed out to me when Tash was hearing songs before they were recorded for the new album. She was saying to me, you know, this does remind me a bit of that record and that time frame, because she's been on all the tours, so she's heard all the songs over the years being played live. I guess you'd say doing these other projects made it so that these songs were songs that I was writing to survive situations, understand where I was emotionally, and I didn't play them for anybody.
So are they quite long in the gestation?
Yeah, I guess you'd say they're a few years coming, and perhaps that gave them time to develop. It wasn't a diary necessarily, these songs. I've been calling it a secret sonic selfie because that's what they became.
Well, it did strike me that Tash is older now, and she's able both to sing on the record but also to be more cognizant of what you do as a songwriter. And I wondered if you were able to allow yourself to be vulnerable lyrically, because you maybe had a sense that your family was also able for that as well.
That's interesting, Nadine, to say that. I haven't really analyzed it, but I think there's probably truth to that. I think as a mother, you do all kinds of things to protect. You make art you believe in, but I believe you're trying to protect as well, especially when they're young. She's at a place where she knows what's going on. She's at boarding school. She ditched us when she was 11. So she said to me and to Mark, look, guys, you're going to be okay. You're going to make it without me. You'll be fine. If you really need me, text me and I'll send jokes. But you'll get through this. Yeah. And so she's been, we see her at the weekend sometimes. But yes, she's inspirational. She shows me all kinds of things because she's very in contact with culture, youth culture. She's
at the Sylvia Young School, right?
Yes, in London.
So performing arts might well be her thing, and she has a super voice. Do you want her to become a singer? Is that what you want for her?
I'd rather her pick something. Here I go as a mom. I'd rather her, I can't believe I'm saying this, I'd rather her pick something that is a little bit more of a career. The music industry is not something that these days people always have more than a 5-year window with. So as a mom, I'd rather her be open to all types of ways to tell story.
Well, I want to talk to you a little more about, I suppose, women in the music industry. But before we do that, what would you like to play for us now?
Oh my goodness, okay. So let's play, why don't we go for Björk and Hyper Ballad?
Do you want to tell me a little bit about some of the other people you've picked as well, just to even run off the names, because there's so many that we won't get to, and I think it'd be nice for people to know who you have mentioned as well.
Well, some of the women, of course, we've Björk, Chrissy Hind,
Sinead O'Connor's in there.
Sinead O'Connor, of course, PJ Harvey, Ricky Lee Jones. There's so many, because I could mention every woman that makes records. I could just go on from Pat Benatar to Hart. Oh my goodness, I remember Magic Man, that record. Oh my God, now that would be me dancing in the mirror as a teenager. Are you kidding me? You have to play that one. You can play Björk too, but they're the extremes. They're the extremes of one is the spiritual side of self, Hyper Ballad, and then leather pants, leather jacket, Magic Man.
Which one are we going for? I don't know.
Oh, well, you got to do Magic Man first.
Songs in the Key of Life with me, Nadine O'Regan, and joined this week by the wonderful Tori Amos, who is in Dublin because, of course, she's been playing gigs at the Olympia for the new album on Repentant Geraldines. Now, Tori, we've just been dancing around the place to you doing an a cappella version of Heart, which was pretty awesome. But I did want to ask you a little bit about women in the industry, because we were speaking about the life cycle of artists these days and how quick it is, how fast the turnaround is. What do you make of, I suppose, some of the women who've come to prominence now, probably more in the straight pop field, the Rihannas, the Gagas of this world, who are making a huge impression, but also maybe it could be argued going slightly retrograde in some of their portrayals of modern women?
Well, if I had Beyonce's body, I'd be sashaying down the streets of Dublin, people, on a giant tongue, and you couldn't stop me, with a piano, no less. No, I mean, I'm being funny, but I think as the songwriters would tell you, in the 90s, it wasn't cool to be overtly sexual. The others are using a sensuality as part of their art. And the men have been doing it for a long, long time. So the fact that the women are equaling up the playing field, and if you really want to be fair about this, Nadine, and analyze it, the rock bands, and some of the guys are acquaintances, and I love them. I love them dearly. But they've had women dancing around to nothing on stage, getting paid a weekly wage. And the fact that now some of these women are making bank because they're the ones utilizing their own sensuality instead of just the male bands. Well, good luck to them. I hope they have good accountants as well.
Well, to move on, There have been some fantastic songs picked today, Tori, and I'm sorry we can't get through the entire list. But before I let you go, one more quick question for you, because I'd be murdered if I didn't ask it. What is it like hanging out in Kinsale? Because I know you have a holiday home down there.
Wow, it's so inspirational. My goodness. There are parts of Ireland you walk into, and it could be almost as if you walk into a different time. There is some kind of magic that can happen here. It's almost as if the stories come alive. And it's not just the last couple hundred years, but I'm talking, you can almost feel like it's thousands of years ago. And you're surrounded by all those stories that are in your mythology.
Well, we're really delighted, I think we're speaking on behalf of a lot of people here, that you started your tour in Cork and in Dublin in Ireland. And you're taking in 80 dates on the tour. It's going to be a big, big tour for the new album on Repentant Geraldines. What track would you like to play to close the show today, Tori Amos?
Well, we've been talking about ancient stories, and this wonderful writer wrote a song about San Jacinto, Peter Gabriel, of course, and talking about Indian ground, Native American ground, and those stories that inspired him. So I'd like to close with that.
Tori Amos, thank you so much for being on Songs in the Key of Life. This is Nadine O'Regan signing off for another week with Peter Gabriel, the wonderful Peter Gabriel. Thanks so much.
Thank you.